Now, we know that when a solid is heated, it melts to a liquid, and when a liquid is made colder, it freezes to a solid. So, ice is a good example, but also if we have a metal, if we got solid gold, and you heat it hot enough, it will melt. It will actually, if you heat it even more, it will evaporate into a gas, gold gas. It would be extremely hot and extremely dangerous and also extremely valuable. So all of these things, a solid turns into a liquid at one point. So it doesn't happen over 10 degrees or 20 degrees. It's at a point of energy. So once the particles have enough energy, enough heat, they become a liquid. If they have enough heat, they'll become a gas. If they don't have enough heat, they'll become a liquid again. They'll stay a liquid until, again, they lose enough energy to become a solid. So this is going from solid to liquid to gas, and they all happen at a point, and these are called the melting points and boiling points of substances. So we're all quite familiar with water. So we know that water is a solid all the way up to 0 degrees. So at -1 or -10 or minus 100, it's a solid. When we get to 0 degrees Celsius, it turns into a liquid. So at that single point, so here it's a solid. At that point, it turns into a liquid. And that's a liquid all the way up until 100 degrees Celsius. And at 100 degrees Celsius, the particles, the water particles, H2O, have enough energy to zip around and be a gas. And so anything more than 100, 200, 300, 1,000 degrees, water is a gas. But we can look at melting points and boiling points of lots of different substances. So if we look at gold here, we know that gold at room temperature, so again, anything below 1064, below its melting point, it is a solid. If it's not hot enough to melt, it's got to be a solid. So at 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 100, 1,000 degrees, it's a solid. But if it gets to 1064, that point, it turns from a solid into a liquid. And then gold is a liquid from 1064 degrees Celsius all the way up to 2,970. But at 2,971, gold turns into a gas. So most of our experience is gold as a solid, but if it gets hotter, it'll end up melting, and then it'll end up boiling. So it goes from a solid to a liquid to a gas. Oxygen, so again, we're quite familiar with oxygen being a gas. So if we look right now, oxygen is a gas. So anything hotter than -183, again, so hotter than the boiling point, at 10 degrees or -100, it's a gas. But if we get colder than 183 Celsius, oxygen turns into a liquid. So liquid oxygen, which is cool, really cold, it would freeze you and would kill you, but it's cool. And then again, if we get colder and colder and colder still, at -219, at -220, oxygen will turn into a solid, which is awesome to think about. I don't know what it would look like, but it's really cool. We can think nitrogen makes up a lot of our, a lot of the air we breathe. Again, it's a gas right now. If it gets colder than 196, turns into a liquid. Colder than 210, turns into a solid. Iron, if it's hotter than 262, iron is a gas. But if iron is 22 degrees, anything colder than 1538, it's a solid. So again, we can look at melting points and boiling points. Sodium salt, the thing you put in your chips, you make that 802 degrees, anything hotter than 801, it'll go from a solid to a liquid. You keep heating salt more than 1465 degrees, 1466, it'll turn into a gas. Mercury is an interesting one because at room temperature, it's a liquid. So in between -39 and 357, it's a liquid. So 25 degrees, 20 degrees right now, it's a liquid. If you make it colder than -39, that's when it will turn into a solid. And mercury can be turned into a gas at the relatively low temperature of 357 degrees Celsius. And silver is the last one. So normally it's a solid. We're used to seeing silver being a solid. Make it really hot, it'll turn into a liquid. Make it really, really, really hot, it'll turn into a gas. So we can use the melting points and boiling points to determine when a substance is a solid, when it's going to be a liquid, and when it's going to be a gas.